Hello, my name is Joseph Roy, and I wanted to share a special message from 2010 that really puts Memorial Day into perspective. This message comes from Lieutenant General John F. Kelly on November 13, 2010, to a speech he gave to the Semper Fi Society of St. Louis. This is the story. I will leave you with a story about the kind of people they are, about the quality of steel in their backs, about the kind of dedication they bring to our country while they serve in the uniform and forever after as veterans. 2 years ago, when I was the commander of all U.S. and Iraqi forces, in fact, the 22nd of April 2008, 2 Marine infantry battalions, 1-9, the Walking Dead, and 2-8 were switching out in Ramadi. One battalion in the closing days of their deployment, going home very soon, the other just starting its 7-month combat tour. 2 Marines, Corporal Jonathan Yale and Lance Corporal Jordan Harder, 22 and 20 years old respectively, one from each battalion, were assuming the watch together at the entrance of the gate of an outpost that contained a makeshift barracks housing 50 Marines. The same broken-down ramshackle building was also home to 100 Iraqi police, also my men and our allies in the fight against the terrorists in Ramadi, a city until recently the most dangerous city on earth and owned by Al-Qaeda. Yale was a dirt-poor mixed kid from Virginia with a wife and daughter, and a mother and sister who lived with him and he supported as well. He did this on a yearly salary of less than $23,000. Harder, on the other hand, was a middle-class white kid from Long Island. They were from 2 completely different worlds. Had they not joined the Marines, they never would have met each other or understood that multiple Americas exist simultaneously depending on one's race, education level, economic status, and where you might have been born. But they were Marines, combat Marines, forged in the same crucible of Marine training, and because of this bond, they were brothers as close, or closer, than if they were born of the same woman. The mission orders they received from the sergeant squad leader, I am sure, went something like, "Okay, you 2 clowns, stand this post and let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. You clear?" I'm also sure Yale and Harder rolled their eyes and said in unison something like, "Yes, Sergeant," with just enough attitude that made the point without saying, "No kidding, sweetheart, we know what we're doing." They then relieved the 2 other Marines on watch and took up their post at the entry control point of the Joint Security Station Nasir in the Sophia section of Ramadi, Al Anbar, Iraq. A few minutes later, a large blue truck turned down the alleyway perhaps 60 to 70 yards in length, and sped its way through the serpentine concrete Jersey walls. The truck stopped just short of where the 2 were posted and detonated, killing them both catastrophically. 24 brick masonry houses were damaged or destroyed. A mosque 100 yards away collapsed. The truck's engine came to rest 200 yards away, knocking most of a house down before it stopped. Our explosive experts reckoned the blast was made of 2,000 pounds of explosives. 2 died, and because these 2 young infantrymen didn't have it in their DNA to run away from danger, they saved 150 of their Iraqi and American brothers in arms. When I read the situation report about the incident a few hours after it happened, I called the regimental commander for details, as something about this struck me as different. Marines dying or being seriously wounded is commonplace in combat. We expect Marines, regardless of their rank or MOS, to stand their ground and do their duty, and even die in the process, if that's what the mission takes. But this just seemed different. The regimental commander had just returned from the site, and he agreed, but reported there were no American witnesses to the event, just Iraqi police. I figured if there was going to be any chance of finding out what actually happened and then to decorate these 2 Marines to acknowledge their bravery, I'd have to do it as a combat award that required 2 eyewitnesses, and we figured the bureaucrats back in Washington would never buy Iraqi statements. If it had any chance at all, it had to come under the signature of a general officer. I traveled to Ramadi the next day and spoke individually to half a dozen Iraqi police, all of whom told the same story. The blue truck turned down into the alley and immediately sped up as it made its way through the serpentine. They all said, "We knew immediately what was going on as soon as the 2 Marines began firing." The Iraqi police then related some of them also fired, and then to a man, ran for safety just prior to the explosion. All survived. Many were injured, some seriously. One of the Iraqis elaborated with tears welling up, said, "They'd run like any normal man would to save his life. What he didn't know until then," he said, and what he learned that very instant was that Marines are not normal. Choking past the emotion, he said, "Sir, in the name of God, no sane man would have stood there and done what they did. No sane man. They saved us all." What we didn't know at the time, and only learned a couple of days later after I wrote a summary and submitted both Yale and Harder for the Navy Cross, was that one of our security cameras, damaged initially in the blast, recorded some of the suicide attack. It happened exactly as the Iraqis had described. It took exactly 6 seconds from when the truck entered the alley until it detonated. You can watch the last 6 seconds of their young lives. Putting myself in their heads, I supposed it took about a second for the 2 Marines to separately come to the same conclusion about what was going on once the truck came into their view at the far end of the alley. Exactly no time at all to talk it over or to call the sergeant to ask what they should do. Only enough time to take a half instant and think about what the sergeant told them to do only a few minutes before. Let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. The 2 Marines had about 5 seconds left to live. It took maybe another 2 seconds for them to present their weapons, take aim, and open up. By this time, the truck was halfway through the barriers and gaining speed the whole time. Here, the recording shows a number of Iraqi police, some who had fired their AKs, now scattering like normal and rational men. There were some running right past the Marines. They had 3 seconds left to live. For about 2 seconds more, the recording shows the Marines' weapons firing non-stop, the truck's windshield exploding into shards of glass as their rounds take it apart and tore into the body of the SOB who was trying to get past them to kill their brothers, Americans and Iraqis bedded down in the barracks, totally unaware of the fact that their lives at that moment depended entirely on 2 Marines standing their ground. If they had been aware, they would have known they were safe, because 2 Marines stood between them and a crazed suicide bomber. The recording shows the truck careening to a stop immediately in front of the 2 Marines. In all of the instantaneous violence, Yale and Harder never hesitated. By all reports and by the recordings, they never stepped back. They never even started to step aside. They never even shifted their weight. With their feet spread shoulder-width apart, they leaned into danger, firing as fast as they could work their weapons. They had only 1 second left to live. The truck explodes. The camera goes blank. 2 young men go to their God. 6 seconds. Not enough time to think about their families, their country, their flag, or about their lives or their deaths, but more than enough time for 2 very brave young men to do their duty into eternity. This is the kind of people who are on watch all over the world tonight for you. We Marines believe that God gave America the greatest gift he could bestow to man while he lived on this earth: freedom. We also believe he gave us another gift nearly as precious: our soldiers, sailors, airmen, coast guardsmen, and Marines, to safeguard that gift and guarantee no force on this earth can ever steal it away. It has been my distinct honor to have been here with you today. Rest assured, our America, this experiment in democracy started over 2 centuries ago, will forever remain the land of the free and the home of the brave, so long as we never run out of tough young Americans who are willing to look past their own self-interest and comfortable lives, go into the darkest and most dangerous places on earth to hunt down and kill those who would do us harm. God bless America, and Semper Fidelis. This Memorial Day, I ask all of us to remember 3 names: Corporal Jonathan Yale and Lance Corporal Jordan Harder, the 2 men mentioned in this story. The 3rd name, and it's not a name that General John F. Kelly mentioned in this speech, is First Lieutenant Robert Michael Kelly, which was General Kelly's son, who was killed in action in Afghanistan only 4 days prior to him giving this speech. Thank you, and God bless America.